I didn't plan to stay in the forest after sunset. The trail was familiar. I had walked it many times before, always leaving just as the light faded behind the trees. Evening usually felt gentle there. Soft wind brushing the leaves, birds settling into silence, the distant hum of the world fading away. But that night, the forest felt different. The air grew colder faster than it should have. Fog crept between the trunks like slow-moving breath. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied, casting a pale circle on the path ahead. Every step sounded louder than normal. Boots against damp soil, branches shifting somewhere beyond sight. I remember stopping when the sounds disappeared completely. No insects, no wind, no movement, just silence. It wasn't peaceful silence. It felt like the forest was waiting. I told myself I was imagining things. Sunset plays tricks on your mind. Shadows stretch. Shapes move where nothing exists. Still, I turned around earlier than planned, suddenly eager to reach the parking lot. That's when I noticed another set of footprints beside mine. Fresh, perfectly matching my pace. They hadn't been there before. I shined my light into the trees, expecting to see another hiker, maybe someone watching from the dark. The beam passed over trunks, branches, and hanging mist, until it stopped on something pale standing just beyond the trail. It didn't move, and somehow, I knew it had been following me long before I arrived. That was the moment I understood I was no longer walking through the forest alone. I started the hike later than I meant to. The sun was already lowering behind the trees, turning the sky a pale orange that slipped through branches like fading fire. The trail felt familiar beneath my boots. Packed dirt, fallen needles, the soft smell of pine and damp earth rising with every step. I had walked this path before, always during daylight, always leaving before dark. That evening felt calm at first. A slow wind moved through the canopy, brushing leaves together in gentle waves. Somewhere far away, a bird called once, then stopped. The silence that followed stayed longer than it should have. I noticed it when my breathing sounded too loud. Each step echoed slightly, as if the forest had emptied itself around me. I checked the time. Later than expected. The light faded quickly, draining color from the trees, until everything turned gray and soft around the edges. Fog gathered low along the ground, curling over roots and stones like quiet breath. I turned around to head back. The trail behind me looked different, not gone, just narrower. Branches leaned closer together, crossing where open space had been minutes before. The path curved strangely, bending in a direction I didn't remember walking. I stood still listening. No wind, no insects, only my heartbeat and the faint rustling of something settling deeper in the woods. I started back anyway. My boots pressed clear prints into the soil. I watched them form, solid proof of direction, proof that I was moving toward the exit. After 10 steps, I glanced behind me again. My footprints were already fading. Not slowly, not naturally. The impression softened as if the ground exhaled, smoothing itself flat. Pine needles shifted, covering the marks until the trail looked untouched. I walked faster. Cold air brushed against my neck. The temperature had dropped sharply, carrying the smell of wet bark and old leaves. My flashlight flickered on, its pale beam cutting through gathering fog. The trail forked. I stopped. There had never been a fork. One path stretched left into darker trees. The other curved right, disappearing behind thick trunks. Neither direction looked familiar. I turned in a slow circle, searching for landmarks, a fallen log, a bent tree, anything recognizable. Everything looked the same. Tall shadows, endless trunks, quiet watching shapes. The forest felt rearranged, as if it had shifted while I wasn't looking. A faint glow appeared ahead. Warm yellow light. Small, steady. A lantern. Relief moved through me before doubt could stop it. Someone else must be nearby. Another hiker. A campsite. A ranger. I followed the light carefully, stepping over roots slick with moisture. The air grew warmer the closer I moved, carrying a faint smell of smoke. But I heard no voices, no laughter, no movement. The lantern hung from a low branch in the middle of a clearing, alone. Its flame burned perfectly still despite the breeze brushing past my face. Beneath it lay bare ground, No tent, no fire pit, no gear. Just light. Waiting. I stood at the edge of the clearing, unsure why my body refused to step closer. The fog circled the lantern without touching it, leaving a clean ring of visibility in the center. My breath came slower, quieter. The forest beyond the light felt darker than before, pressing inward. I turned back toward the trail. There was no opening where I had entered, only trees, dense, close, unbroken. My chest tightened. I walked toward where the path should have been, pushing through branches. Twigs scraped my sleeves. Leaves brushed my face, damp and cold. After a few steps, I stopped again. There was no trail at all. No sign anyone had ever walked there. The ground was smooth, untouched. I spun around, searching for the lantern again. It was farther away now, much farther. Its glow dimmed between the trees, shrinking as if retreating on its own. Panic tried to rise, but the forest swallowed it before it could grow loud. The quiet pressed against me, heavy and patient. I listened carefully. Soft, rustling moved somewhere behind me. Not footsteps, something slower, like branches adjusting their position. I walked in another direction, choosing what felt like downhill. The fog thickened around my legs. My light caught tree trunks that seemed subtly different each time I passed them. Knots appearing where none existed before, bark patterns shifting slightly. The forest wasn't still. It was changing, guiding, closing. I checked behind me again. No path, no footprints. Only trees standing shoulder to shoulder, sealing every space I left behind. A realization settled gently, colder than fear. The forest wasn't letting me retrace my steps. It wasn't lost. I was being kept. The lantern's glow vanished completely. Darkness filled the space where it had been, leaving only pale flashlight beams trembling in my hand. I stood there for a long time, listening to my own breathing fade into the quiet. Somewhere deep within the trees, something moved, not toward me, around me, patient, waiting for me to understand. Night had fully arrived, and the trail had closed behind me. The forest felt heavier after that first night. Morning never really came. Light filtered through the branches, pale and thin, like something pretending to be daylight. The fog stayed low along the ground, refusing to lift. Even the air tasted different, colder, quieter, as if sound itself moved carefully here. I kept walking. Standing still felt worse. Tall pines surrounded me now, their trunks rising straight into the gray sky. Needles covered the forest floor, soft under my boots, swallowing each step until I barely heard myself move. That was when I noticed a whisper. So faint I thought it was wind slipping through branches. A soft breath behind me. I stopped. The whisper stopped too. Silence returned instantly, thick enough to feel against my skin. I walked again, and it came back. Not words at first, just fragments, shapes of sound brushing past my ears. A murmur moving from tree to tree, circling slowly as if trying to remember how language worked. I told myself it was imagination, fatigue, isolation, but then I heard something clear. My own voice. Keep moving. I froze. The words had come from somewhere ahead, carried gently between pines. The tone was unmistakable. My voice exactly, quiet and tired, repeating a thought I had never spoken aloud. My breath turned shallow. The forest repeated me again. Don't stop now. The whisper slid through branches to my left this time. Needles rustled softly overhead. The trees leaned slightly in the breeze, though I felt no wind against my face. I turned toward the sound. Nothing waited there. Only trunks standing in long rows, fading into fog. I tried to ignore it and continued walking, but the whispers followed. They moved with me, drifting just beyond sight, repeating fragments of my thoughts moments after they formed. I wondered if I was walking in circles. Walking in circles. The forest answered immediately. A cold shiver ran down my arms. I covered my mouth instinctively, as if silence could stop it. But the whispers didn't need spoken words. They pulled directly from my mind, echoing each doubt back into the air. Memories followed next. Half-finished conversations. Regrets. Questions I had buried years ago. You should have turned back. You knew better. The voices layered over one another, overlapping gently without anger or urgency. Calm, curious, almost patient. They weren't trying to scare me. They were listening. I began moving toward the loudest whisper, drawn without fully deciding to follow it. The pines grew closer together, their branches knitting overhead until the sky disappeared entirely. The air changed. A faint vibration passed through the ground, barely noticeable at first, a low hum pressing against my ears. The temperature dropped again, carrying the sharp scent of sap and damp bark. The whispers grew clearer, dozens now, all versions of my voice. Some younger, some older, some barely audible. They guided me forward until the trees suddenly opened into a clearing. I stepped out carefully. The hum intensified. The air itself seemed to tremble, like invisible static brushing against my skin. My flashlight flickered even though the battery was full. Pale light bounced off floating particles drifting slowly through the clearing. The whisper surrounded me completely. Every thought I had repeated back from different directions, overlapping into a soft chorus. It felt intimate, uncomfortably close. I looked around, searching for speakers, people, anything. Nothing stood in the clearing, only tall pines forming a perfect circle around me. That was when I realized something strange. The whispers weren't coming from the air. They were coming from the trees. The trunks faced inward, bark patterns twisted into shapes almost resembling eyes. Branches angled downward slightly, as if leaning closer to observe. Watching, listening, my chest tightened. Without thinking, I met the nearest tree with direct eye contact. The whispers stopped instantly. No fading, no echo, just absolute silence. The hum vanished with them, leaving the clearing empty and still. Even the fog seemed frozen in place. I waited. Nothing returned. The forest held its breath. A deep unease settled over me then. Not fear exactly, but the feeling of interrupting something private, like walking into a conversation meant to continue forever without being noticed. I stepped backward. Dry needles cracked under my boot, loud against the silence. The moment I broke eye contact with the trees, a faint rustling moved behind me. The whispers did not return, but I felt their absence like pressure lifting from my ears. The clearing no longer felt welcoming, only observed. I turned and walked away quickly, re-entering the dense pines. The air outside felt duller, quieter, almost empty without the murmuring voices. After several minutes, I paused and listened again. No whispers followed, no echo of my thoughts, just a slow rhythm of my breathing and the distant sway of branches above. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest had learned something about me, something important. And somewhere behind me, hidden among the pines, the trees were still listening. I found the building just before evening returned. The forest had grown darker long, before sunset, shadows settling early between the trees. My legs ached from walking without direction, guided only by instinct and faint openings between trunks. Then I saw straight lines, walls, a structure where no structure should have been. The ranger station stood quietly among the trees, weatherwood darkened by age. Moss crept along the foundation. A wooden sign hung crooked near the door, its lettering faded beyond reading. Relief came first. A place built by people meant safety. The door was slightly open. It moved inward when I pushed it, hinges groaning softly. Warm air did not greet me, only stillness and the faint smell of dust and old paper. I stepped inside. The room was simple. A desk, filing cabinets, shelves lined with maps curled at the edges. Everything looked abandoned but untouched, as if someone had left only moments ago and never returned. The silence felt thicker indoors. I noticed the windows next. There weren't any. Not one. Where glass should have been, wooden panels covered every opening from the inside. Nails sealed them tightly in place, blocking all light from outside. The realization settled slowly. Someone had closed the forest out. A small lantern sat on the desk, unlit. Beside it lay a logbook, its cover worn smooth by many hands. I opened it carefully. Pages filled with handwriting greeted me. Dozens of entries written in different styles and inks. Some neat, others frantic. Short messages repeated across years. Do not stay after dark. The trails change. If you hear footsteps, don't answer. My fingers trembled as I turned another page. Dates stretched back decades, then forward strangely, skipping years entirely. Some entries overlapped, as if written by people who never met, but shared the same warning. The final page waited near the back. Fresh ink, still dark. I read the date twice. Tomorrow. The message underneath was short. It knows you're inside now. A soft sound came from outside. Footsteps, slow, measured, circling the building. The wood walls creaked faintly as something moved along the exterior. Gravel shifted beneath weight too steady to be animal. I held my breath. The footsteps paused near one wall, then continued, a complete circle. Another pass began immediately after, not searching, pacing. The panels covering the windows rattled gently as if tested from outside. A faint pressure press against the wood, followed by silence again. I backed away from the walls, heart beating harder with each step. The ranger station suddenly felt less like shelter and more like a place meant to hide. The footsteps stopped at the door. The handle did not turn. Nothing knocked, but I felt presence waiting just beyond it. Minutes passed, or longer. Time stretched strangely in the dim room. Eventually the footsteps moved away, fading into forest until only silence remained again. I approached the door slowly. Part of me wanted to stay inside forever, but another feeling rose beneath it. A quiet certainty that remaining here would only delay something inevitable. I opened the door. The forest waited calmly outside. No tracks marked the ground. No movement disturbed the trees. Only fading light and deepening fog. I stepped back onto the trail that wasn't a trail anymore, leaving the ranger station behind. As I walked away, I glanced over my shoulder once. The building looked darker now, smaller, almost hidden, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw someone standing inside, watching through a window that did not exist. The path narrowed as night returned. Branches brushed my shoulders on both sides, forcing me into a single line between dense trees. The forest felt tighter here, quieter, every step swallowed by layers of fallen needles. I noticed the other footsteps after several minutes, perfectly timed with mine. Step, step, not behind me, beside me, somewhere beyond the trees to my right. I slowed. The footsteps slowed. I stopped completely. They stopped too. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. I waited, listening carefully. My breath drifted into the cold air, visible in faint clouds. Nothing moved until I took another step. The unseen walker matched it instantly. Same rhythm, same pace, always separated by the thick wall of trees. I tried walking faster. The steps quickened. I slowed again. They slowed with me. The realization formed slowly. Whatever moved there wasn't chasing. It was accompanying, walking parallel. I turned my flashlight toward the trees. Pale light cut between trunks, but revealed only darkness layered behind darkness. Branches swayed slightly, though no wind touched my face. I kept walking, unable to stop now. The footsteps stayed perfectly aligned, step for step, breath for breath. Minutes passed like this, the invisible presence never crossing into view. The forest felt divided by an invisible boundary neither of us crossed. Then I stopped suddenly. The footsteps halted at the exact same moment. A new sound followed. Breathing. Close. Much closer than before. Slow inhalation. Only a few feet away beyond the trees. Warm air seemed to move through the branches toward me. I didn't turn. Instinct told me not to look directly. We stood there together, separated by trunks, sharing the same stretch of forest without seeing each other. After a long moment, I stepped forward again. The breathing faded. The footsteps resumed beside me, and I understood something quietly terrifying. Whatever walked there wasn't lost. It knew exactly where I was going. Rain began without warning, soft at first, then steady, soaking the forest in cold silver streaks. Leaves shimmered under the falling water. The ground turned slick beneath my boots, releasing the smell of wet soil and pine. I searched for shelter. That was when I saw the glow. Orange light flickered to the rain ahead, steady and warm against the gray darkness. A campfire. Relief pulled me toward it before doubt could follow. The clearing opened suddenly, revealing flames burning strong despite the downpour. Sparks rose upward untouched by rain, disappearing into low fog hanging above. No one sat nearby. No tent. No movement. Only fire. I approached slowly. Heat reached me immediately, comforting against the cold, damp air. Beside the flame sat two metal mugs resting on flat stones, steam curling gently from their rims. Fresh, recently used. I looked around. "Hello." My voice sounded small. The forest did not answer. Shadows gathered just beyond the firelight, forming a dark ring where trees stood too close together. The rain softened there, barely touching the ground inside the circle. The fire cracked quietly. Waiting, I crouched near it, extending my hands toward the warmth. The heat felt deliberate, perfectly placed, perfectly maintained, as if someone expected me. Minutes passed. The rain continued, yet the fire never weakened. I noticed another strange detail then. There were no footprints in the mud. Not mine, not anyone else's. The clearing looked untouched except for the fire itself. Unease settled slowly beneath the comfort. I stood, intending to leave. My body hesitated. An unexpected heaviness pressed against my chest. A deep reluctance to step away from the warmth. The forest beyond the firelight looked darker than anywhere I had been before. Leaving felt wrong. Unsafe. I took one step, backward anyway. The flames flared higher instantly, sparks rising sharply as if reacting to my movement. The shadows shifted. Not moving closer, but watching. I felt it clearly then. The fire wasn't abandoned. It had been lit for someone. For me. I backed away slowly, forcing myself toward the edge of clearing. The warmth faded with each step, replaced by cold mist brushing my skin. The moment I crossed into the trees, the fire dimmed behind me. I turned once more. The flames were already smaller, almost gone, and in the brief fading light, I thought I saw another figure standing on the opposite side of the fire, warming their hands exactly where I had been. The trail narrowed as evening settled into trees. Not dark yet, just that slow fading light that makes colors lose their meaning. Pine needles softened my steps. Cold air pressed against my face. Somewhere far off, a bird called once, then stopped midway through its song. I remember thinking the forest felt paused, like breath held too long. That was when I saw the deer. It stood directly in the center of the path, perfectly still, its body faced sideways, ribs rising faintly beneath pale fur. Antlers stretched upward like branches frozen in winter. The last orange light of sunset touched its back. I stopped walking. Leaves settled around my boots. My own breathing felt loud, too alive for that quiet place. The deer looked at me. Its eyes reflected the fading light, but too brightly, not the soft glow animals usually carry. This was sharper, almost metallic. I waited for it to move, for an ear to twitch, for a hoof to shift against the soil. Nothing changed. Wind slipped between trees, brushing my jacket. The deer did not blink. Seconds stretched, then minutes. The forest slowly darkened around us. Shadows gathering at the roots of trees. Mosquitoes drifted near my hands, yet the deer ignored them. Its gaze stayed fixed on me, unmoving, unblinking. I checked my watch. Nearly 20 minutes had passed. The sky deepened to blue-gray. Cold crept through my sleeves. Still it watched. A strange thought settled in my chest. It wasn't deciding whether I was dangerous. It was waiting for something else. Time became uncertain after that. The forest smelled damp and old. My legs ached from standing still. An hour, maybe more. Darkness arrived fully, pressing close between the trees. And the deer never blinked. Not once. My throat felt dry. I whispered a soft apology without knowing why, then stepped slowly off the trail to walk around it. Each step felt loud despite the moss beneath me. Closer. I passed within arm's reach. Its breath never fogged the air. Its body never shifted. The eye followed me. Only the eye, sliding slowly, impossibly smooth, tracking my movement while the rest of the animal remained frozen in place. A cold weight settled behind my ribs. I moved past it quickly, back onto the trail. I told myself not to look back. I lasted 3 steps. When I turned, the deer was still there, exactly the same. But something else had changed. Shapes stood between the trees. At first I thought they were trunks or fallen branches. Dark vertical forms barely visible in the fading light. Then one moved. No, not moved. Adjusted. Another deer stood deeper in the woods. Then another, and another. Dozens of pale shapes filled the forest on both sides of the path. All perfectly still. All facing me. Their eyes caught what little light remained, glowing softly like scattered glass. None blinked. The forest had gone completely silent. No insects. No rustling leaves. Even the wind seemed to avoid that place. I realized I had never heard any of them arrive. They had simply been there, watching. My skin prickled, as if cold fingers brushed my neck. Every direction I looked revealed another pair of eyes, some partially hidden behind trunks, some standing openly among ferns. A circle forming without movement, without sound. I took a step backward. Every head turned at once. Perfect synchronization. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to keep me centered in their attention. My breath came shallow. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rain before a storm. I tried counting them, lost track after 20. Their stillness felt wrong in a deeper way than fear. Predators stalk, prey flee, but these animals only observed, as if I were the strange one wandering through their world, as if they were measuring me, waiting for recognition. The first deer remained behind me on the trail. I could feel its gaze without looking, a pressure between my shoulders. I walked forward slowly. The path ahead remained open. The deer parted without moving, simply standing far enough apart that I could pass between their silent bodies. Eyes followed. Hundreds of reflections glimmered in the dark. My footsteps sounded small, temporary. I resisted the urge to run. Running felt like breaking a rule I did not understand. So I walked, carefully, quietly, until the trees thickened again and the watchers faded into shadow. Only then did sound return. Crickets resumed their steady rhythm. Leaves whispered overhead. The forest breathed again. I turned back one last time. The path behind me was empty. No deer, no glowing eyes. Just darkness settling over ordinary trees. For a moment I convinced myself I had imagined it. Then I noticed something else. Along the edge of the trail, faint impressions marked the soil. Hoof prints, dozens of them, all facing the same direction, toward where I had been standing, toward me. And even as I walked away, deeper into the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere behind the trees, they were still watching, waiting for me to stop moving long enough to join their stillness. The signal died hours ago. No bars, no noise, just trees and thin wind moving through them. My phone still lit up anyway. It rang once, then stopped. A voicemail appeared without notification. Unknown number. I shouldn't have played it, but I did. My own voice came through, soft, close, almost too close to the microphone. Keep walking. Don't stop at the broken trees. I froze. The forest around me didn't change, but it felt like it was listening with me. My voice continued. Turn left when the ground sinks. You'll see the tower before it sees you. Static cut through the recording like distant insects. Then silence. The voicemail didn't end. It kept going, still recording. In real time, I looked up. The trees leaned slightly inward, as if narrowing the path ahead. Dirt felt softer under my feet, damp and uneven. I walked, left at the sinking ground. Just like it said, the forest shifted subtly as I moved. Not visually at first. Sound first. Birds stopped. Then insects. Then even the wind felt careful. Ahead, something rose through the trees. A shape too straight for nature. A tower. Wooden. Old. Watching. My phone vibrated again. New voicemail. Same voice. Mine. Don't look up yet. I looked up anyway. The top window of the tower was lit. It appeared where no water existed. A wooden bridge stretching between two banks of nothing. No river. No stream. Just air beneath it that felt heavier than ground. I stood at its edge. The wood creaked softly under my weight. Not from movement. from age that shouldn't exist. The moment I stepped onto it, everything changed. The forest sound dropped away. No insects, no birds. Even my footsteps felt muted, swallowed. Colors faded as I walked. Greens turning gray, browns becoming dust. The air grew thick, like breathing through fabric. Halfway across, I stopped. Looked back. The bridge behind me was still there, but already dissolving, edges breaking into fog. Slow, quiet, as if it had never been meant to stay visible. I turned forward again. Something waited on the far side, not clearly seen, just presence. Heavy, patient, the kind of waiting that doesn't need motion. The bridge continued to vanish behind me. Each step forward felt like leaving something real behind. When I reached the end, there was no ground, only forest again, but different, heavier, like it had noticed me crossing. The sign said the campground was closed, has been for years, but the map still showed one active site, Site 27. I found it deeper than the rest. Too deep. Tents should not still stand in places like this. But one did, perfectly pitched. No wind movement, no sagging fabric. Inside, gear was arranged neatly. Too neatly, like someone had memorized how humans organize life, and followed it too precisely. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, except the kettle. It sat on a small stove, whistling. There was no heat, no flame, just sound, continuous, unbothered. I stepped closer. The whistle stopped immediately. Silence rushed in like something released pressure, then resumed the moment I stopped moving. I backed away. It stopped again. The forest around Site 27 felt tighter than the rest. Trees closer, air still. Night arrived too quickly, not fading, dropping, like a curtain pulled down. Inside the tent, something shifted, not visible, but present, occupying space I couldn't see. The gear inside the tent remained perfectly arranged. But now I noticed a second set of impressions in the dust. Fresh, like someone had just stood there, watching me stand outside, without leaving footprints. They appeared after midnight, small floating lights between the trunks, soft, pale, like lanterns without hands. They drifted slowly, not touching the ground. No sound came from them, only presence. I followed one without thinking. It moved away the moment I focused on it, always just out of reach, always aware. Another light joined it, then another. They didn't travel randomly. They responded, to attention, to thought. When I stopped watching, they paused. When I looked again, they retreated, like they understood observation. I raised my hand slightly. One light moved closer, close enough to illuminate the space in front of me. In its glow, I saw handprints, suspended in the air, not on trees, not on ground, just floating, as if something had pressed against invisible glass. My breath caught. The lights dimmed slightly, all of them, together, then shifted, slowly circling me. No rush, no panic, just formation, a ring tightening with patience. The handprints faded. The forest beyond them disappeared into darkness again, and the lights kept coming closer. I unfolded the paper map again. It should have stayed still. It never did. New lines appeared across the surface the moment I looked at it, faint at first, then darker, like ink remembering where it belonged. Paths shifted between folds of paper, routes that weren't there before, some of them leading deeper into the forest, others circling back to where I had already been. The map felt warmer than it should have been, thin paper against cold fingers, yet alive with faint vibration. A new label formed near the center. Quiet zones. I didn't remember those being there. I looked up. The forest no longer matched what I saw on the map. Trees stood in places that didn't align. Paths bent where they shouldn't. Distance felt uncertain, like depth had loosened its rules. The map updated again, faster this time. One path darkened and extended forward on its own. It ended at a symbol I had never seen. A small mark, simple text beneath it. Stay here. The words pressed into the paper like a warning that had been there longer than the forest itself. I folded the map. It unfolded itself again in my hands. The sound came from above. Not wind, not branches. Footsteps, heavy ones, moving across treetops that should not have been able to carry weight. Leaves trembled in synchronized waves, like something enormous walking just beyond sight. I looked up, only darkness between branches. No shape, no outline, but the steps continued. Slow, deliberate, circling, as if pacing, as if observing from a level I couldn't reach. A branch cracked far overhead. Then another. Leaves began to fall, not scattered, controlled. They drifted downward in patterns. Lines, arcs, guiding movement below. I followed one without thinking. It led me forward, always forward. The footsteps above matched my pace. When I stopped, they stopped too, waiting. The forest felt smaller under that invisible weight, like I was being measured from above, and found to still be here. Lights appeared through the fog. Flashlights, wobbling between trees. Human shapes behind them, approaching slowly, carefully, like rescuers. My first instinct was relief. Then silence replaced it. No voices, no calling names, only movement. I stepped forward. The beam shifted away instantly, never touching me, always angled just past my body. The figures turned slightly when I got too close, as if avoiding recognition. I called out. My voice sounded too loud in the fog. They stopped. Every light dimmed at once. Then they turned away, not running, just leaving, disappearing into trees without sound. I followed, but found nothing, only fresh paper on the ground, missing person flyers, my face printed on them, multiple versions, different dates, some old enough to be yellowed, some too recent to exist. The fog thickened around the pages. Then they lifted slightly in the air, as if something beneath them had exhaled. It stood alone, a cabin I hadn't seen before, would darkened by age. Windows fogged from the inside. No smoke, no light leaks, only stillness. Inside there was one chair, centered, facing the door. Nothing else. No table, no bed, no signs of life except dust shaped like waiting. The air inside felt warmer than outside, too warm for emptiness, like someone had just left, or never left at all. I stepped in. The floor creaked softly under my weight. The chair did not move, but it felt occupied. Outside, night deepened quickly, too quickly. Then came knocking, slow, patient, from the porch. 3 knocks, pause, 3 again. I looked at the door. No footsteps approached or left. Just that steady rhythm, waiting for response. The chair behind me felt closer somehow, even though it hadn't moved. The knocking continued, and I understood something I couldn't explain. The chair wasn't waiting for someone to sit in it. It was waiting for someone to arrive. I heard laughter first. Faint, distant, warm in a way that didn't belong here. A campfire flickered between trees ahead. Orange light dancing against smoke. I shouldn't have gone closer, but I did. There were people there, talking, moving, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. Then I saw myself, sitting near the fire, younger, calmer, laughing at something I couldn't hear clearly. Another version of me passed a cup across the circle. The scene repeated. Not exactly. Slight differences each loop. A hand raised slightly too late. A laugh that cut off mid-sound. A fire that burned brighter each reset. It was happening again and again. The same moment. Rewritten slightly every time. I stepped closer. The air distorted immediately. Heat shifted into cold. The fire flickered backward. The people froze for a fraction of a second. All of them, including me. Then they resumed, but slower, like they had noticed something watching. My breath felt unfamiliar in my chest. I tried to speak. No sound came out. The campfire kept looping, endlessly, and every time it reset, it felt less like watching the past, and more like being edited out of it. The trees changed when I wasn't looking directly at them, not in shape, in meaning. Flashlight beam cut through the dark bark, and for a moment I saw marks carved into the wood. At first they looked like scratches, then letters, then words. They only appeared in the light, disappearing the moment I looked away. The path itself felt narrower, like the forest was leaning inward to listen. The first question formed clearly. Why are you still walking? I stopped. Nothing moved. No wind. No insects. Only that slow pressure silence. I didn't answer. The trees tightened slightly. Another carving appeared ahead. Do you remember the way out? My throat felt dry. The question felt personal, in a way it shouldn't have been. I whispered, yes. The trail shifted immediately, not visually, directionally, like the answer had been it. I turned. The path followed. Refusing silence made it worse. Each refusal made the forest closer. Each answer made it stranger. The questions grew longer, more specific. Things I had never told anyone. Things I barely thought. And the forest still asked them. The clearing should have been quiet. Instead, it hummed. Low, electrical, constant, like invisible wires stretched through the air. My radio turned on by itself. No battery should have worked here. Static filled it immediately. But inside the static, something almost shaped like speech. Not words. Structure. Human-shaped noise. I turned the radio off. It turned back on. The clearing felt wrong in a different way than the forest. Less alive. More present. Like something had been installed in the space. The hum intensified when I thought about leaving. Every step toward the edge of the clearing made the sound grow sharper. Like resistance. Like pressure. When I stopped thinking about escape, it softened. The static flickered again, briefly forming silhouettes in noise. Standing upright. Watching. Then gone. The clearing wanted attention. Not movement. Attention. It rose above the trees like a mistaken height. Too tall. Too straight. No branches touched it. No roots explained it. A watchtower, but no stairs. Only vertical with disappearing into canopy darkness. A single window glowed at the top. Warm light. Unnatural in that cold forest. I circled it. No entry point. No ladder. No door at ground level. Still, I felt watched. The light above shifted. A silhouette appeared in the window. Still, then moving. Slowly mirroring me. I stopped. It stopped. I raised my hand. It raised its hand. Exact timing. Exact angle. My reflection was not delayed. It was simultaneous. But I was not inside the tower. I stepped closer. The silhouette leaned forward slightly, as if inspecting me, or recognizing me. The tower creaked softly in wind that didn't exist at its height, and I realized it wasn't copying me. It was rehearsing me. I noticed it gradually. Silence between creatures. Birds perched without movement. Deer standing too still. Foxes frozen mid-step. All of them facing the same direction. Deeper into the forest. No variation. No hesitation. Even insects stopped moving near the ground, angled towards something unseen. The forest felt like it was collectively looking at something I couldn't yet see. Something ahead. Something approaching. I followed their gaze. Step by step. No sound except my own breath. The animals did not react to me anymore, as if I was irrelevant compared to what they were watching. I turned my head slightly. Behind me, the forest felt empty. Ahead, it felt occupied. Then I heard it, breathing. Not mine. Behind me, close enough that I didn't hear it arrive. Midnight did not arrive like time. It arrived like a decision. Everything shifted at once. The trails disappeared. Not hidden. Gone. The stars above blurred, then faded entirely, as if erased from the sky. Shadows detached from objects, moving slightly on their own before settling into new positions. The forest was no longer consistent. Rules loosened. Paths formed where there were none before, then broke apart again. Time stretched strangely. Seconds felt uneven. Breaths took longer than expected. The forest seemed to operate under a different logic now. Not chaotic. Intentional. I walked forward, but direction lost meaning quickly. Every turn felt correct and wrong at the same time. Trees leaned subtly when I passed them, as if acknowledging presence. The air carried no wind, yet everything still moved slightly, like the forest was breathing without lungs. I stopped trying to understand it. That made it quieter, but not safer, because after midnight, the forest was no longer something I moved through. It was something that moved around me, The tent appeared before I realized I was looking for shelter, half hidden between trees, fabric still, no movement in the air around it. I stepped closer. The ground beneath it was dry, unnaturally so. Inside, warmth greeted me, soft, steady, like someone had been breathing heat into the space for a long time. But no one was there. Everything inside was already arranged, neatly, carefully, as if prepared for arrival. My bag sat exactly where I would have placed it. Even things I hadn't unpacked were there, folded, ordered, waiting. Footsteps circled outside the tent, slow, not rushing, not leaving, just moving around the perimeter like a thought refusing to end. I didn't move. The tent fabric tightened slightly with each pass, like it was listening. Something knew the rightful owner had returned, but hadn't decided who that was yet. I noticed the first name at eye level, carved deep into the tree, fresh enough to still feel sharp. Then another, and another. Every trunk along the path carried names. Hundreds, some familiar, most not. Then I saw mine. My name was carved cleanly into the bark. Not recent, not old either. Somewhere in between, as if time didn't apply to it correctly. I ran my fingers over it. The wood felt warm. Behind me, the forest grew quieter. Wind moved through branches, but it carried something else with it. Whispers, soft, repeating names. Each tree seemed to speak when I wasn't looking directly at it, and some names faded as I watched, as if being forgotten in real time, or erased. The wind touched my ear again, calling my name back into the forest, like it had always belonged there. I should have found the road, the exit, the place where everything started. Instead, there was nothing, no parking area, no signs, no markers of human presence. Only forest, endless in every direction. I turned slowly. Same trees, same silence. No direction felt different from another anymore. Memories of the outside world started to blur at the edges. Roads felt imagined. Buildings felt distant in a way that made them uncertain. Like remembered a place I had never truly been. My phone showed no signal. No time updates. Just a blank screen that felt heavier than before. Even my thoughts felt slower, less connected. The forest did not seem to end. It simply continued. Without reference, without permission. I stood still for a long time, and realized stillness here did not mean stopping. It meant becoming unplaceable. Sunset arrived again. Or maybe it was the same one repeating. The sky turned pale orange through the trees. Soft light stretching across trunks like memory. A figure stood ahead, still, exactly centered in the fading light, waiting. I approached slowly. Each step felt familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. The figure mirrored my posture perfectly. Not imitation, synchronization. When I raised my hand slightly, it did the same. When I stopped breathing for a moment, it did too. The closer I got, the more I felt something shift in perception. Like I wasn't walking toward it. I was walking toward a reflection of myself that had been standing there longer than I had existed in this moment. Its face was unclear. Not hidden, just unresolved. As if identity hadn't finished forming yet. Then a thought settled quietly. This wasn't an encounter. It was placement. A position being prepared for someone new. Someone arriving after me. I understand now. The forest was never separate from me. It was a slow acceptance. A place that doesn't take. It keeps. Everything I saw before was connected. Threads looping back through themselves, repeating until meaning softened into pattern. Paths I walked returned quietly beneath my feet. Campfires, towers, bridges, all folding into one another. Not endings. Continuations. The forest is calm again. Almost gentle. The trees no longer feel like watchers. More like listeners who already know the answer. Time doesn't move here the way it used to. It settles. Like dust. Like breath held too long finally released. Familiar places appear again at the edges of sight. Not new. Not old. Just present in a different way. And I realized something without surprise anymore. There was never a way out. Only transition. The storyteller doesn't leave the woods. The storyteller becomes part of how the woods remember. And when I speak now, It is not into the forest. It is through it, quietly, endlessly, like something that never really left. Because it finally learned where it belongs.